At my mother's 80th birthday dinner, my new stepdaughter raised her glass and called me Dad's retirement plan. When I asked her to apologize, my husband laughed and said, "She's not your daughter, Evie. Don't correct her." That was the moment something inside me went very still. Not broken, not angry, just still. We were sitting in a private room at the Oakwood Chop House in Carmel, Indiana. I had spent 3 weeks arranging that dinner for my mother, Linda. I called twice to make sure the entrance worked for her walker. I asked for a chair with firm support. I even brought a small cushion from home because her new knee still stiffened if she sat too long. The restaurant had soft yellow lighting, dark wood walls, and white tablecloths that made everyone sit a little straighter. My sister Carol brought a bouquet of pink roses. My son Daniel drove over from Fisher's straight after work, still wearing the navy polo he kept in his truck for family events. It should have been a good night. Grant's daughter Madison arrived 40 minutes late. She swept in wearing a cream-colored coat I had helped pay for at Christmas, carrying a handbag that cost more than my first washing machine. She kissed her father on the cheek, gave my mother a quick wave, and said, "Sorry, parking was insane." Parking wasn't insane. The lot was half empty when she walked in, but I said nothing. I was trying in those days to be what people call a good stepmother. Madison was 21, a junior at Northgate University. According to Grant, she'd struggled after her parents' divorce, so I told myself patience was just part of blending a family. So I paid. At first, small things: a phone bill, a dental copay, a few $100s for textbooks. Then came tuition installments, sorority dues, car insurance, the Jeep payment, and a monthly allowance Grant said would let Madison focus on school. "You're giving her a real chance," he used to tell me. I liked hearing that. After 12 years as a widow, it felt good to believe I was building something again. The toast dinner went smoothly for maybe 20 minutes. My mother told a story about getting pulled over in 1968 while driving my father's Plymouth without a license. Daniel teased her about being a criminal. Even Grant laughed. Then Daniel asked Madison how her business classes were going. Madison glanced up from her phone. "They're fine. College is pretty easy when Dad marries a woman who loves spreadsheets and automatic payments." Daniel stopped smiling. Carol lowered her water glass slowly. Grant gave a short laugh, the kind people use when they want everyone else to accept that something cruel was only a joke. I looked at Madison. "What does that mean?" She shrugged. "Nothing. I'm saying you're organized." "That isn't what you said." "Oh, come on, Evie." My mother shifted in her chair, trying not to make a scene on her own birthday, which made me even angrier. Then Madison lifted her wine glass. "To Dad," she said. "He finally found a retirement plan with excellent credit." No one laughed that time. I could hear silverware touching plates in the main dining room. Somewhere near the kitchen, a waiter dropped something metal. I put down my fork. "Madison, apologize." Her eyebrows rose. "For what?" "For insulting me in front of my family. At my mother's birthday dinner." She looked at Grant. That's when he placed his hand over my wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, just hard enough to stop me from moving. "She's not your daughter, Evie," he said loudly. "Don't correct her." He said it loudly. That's the part I remember most. Not just the words, but the volume. He wanted everyone at that table to understand exactly where I stood. I looked down at his hand covering mine. My fingers already ached from the cold, and the pressure made the joints throb. "Take your hand off me." He did, but he rolled his eyes. "You're turning a joke into a family crisis." Madison leaned back, satisfied. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I wish I could tell you I delivered some brilliant comeback. I didn't. My face was hot, my thoughts stumbling over each other. Then I looked at my mother. She wasn't embarrassed by me. She was worried for me. That helped. I folded my napkin and set it beside my plate. "All right," I said. "Then I won't be expected to support her like one." Grant laughed. "Don't be ridiculous." "I'm not." Madison shook her head and picked up her phone, like I'd become boring. The rest of dinner was stiff and miserable. My mother opened her gifts. We sang Happy Birthday. Carol cut the cake while Grant talked too loudly about the weather. I paid the final bill. because my card was already on file. The ledger. On the drive home, Grant waited until we'd passed the third roundabout. You embarrassed me tonight. I stared through the windshield. I embarrassed you? You challenged my daughter in front of everyone. She insulted me. She made a joke. And you told me I had no place correcting her. You don't. Not like that. I turned toward him. But I do have a place paying her bills. He tightened both hands on the wheel. Let's not punish a kid over one stupid comment. She's 21, still in school. There it was. The shift from independent adult to helpless child, depending on who owed whom an apology. Grant exhaled sharply. Her tuition payments due Friday. Don't do anything emotional. I looked back out the window. She became a kid again the moment a bill was due. That shut him up for the rest of the drive. The next morning, I woke at 5:38 with my lower back burning. I made coffee, pressed a heating pad behind me, and opened my laptop at the kitchen table. By 6:12, I had pulled up 22 months of bank statements. I've always kept good records. Payroll work teaches you that numbers may be boring, but they're rarely confused. The list was worse than I expected. Tuition. The Jeep payment. Insurance. $900 a month in living expenses, phone service, sorority dues, dental bills, a study abroad deposit. Then I saw several transfers marked MH Education, nearly $30,000. But the recipient wasn't Northgate University. The money had gone into an account connected to Grant's real estate business. My hand rested over the mouse. For a moment, I nearly closed the page. I remembered Grant sitting beside me on the anniversary of my first husband's death. I remembered him cooking dinner when my sciatica flared. I remembered how relieved I felt to be loved again. Then I remembered his hand over my wrist. I canceled the future payments I legally controlled. I removed Madison as an authorized user on my credit card. I stopped the allowance. I ended the automatic Jeep payment. I redirected my consulting income into an account Grant couldn't access. I didn't take her car. I didn't call the school. I simply stopped volunteering my money. At 7:03, Grant walked into the kitchen holding his phone. What the hell did you do? I turned the laptop toward him and spread the printed statements across the table. I followed your boundary. She isn't my daughter. You're her father. His anger lasted about 5 seconds. Then his eyes landed on the transfers. The color left his face. I tapped the page. Why did nearly $30,000 marked for Madison's education end up in your business account? Grant reached across the table to grab the statements. I pulled them back. And that's when I knew the insult at dinner was no longer the biggest problem in my marriage. Complicated Grant's hand stopped halfway across the table. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he sat back and gave me the look I'd seen him use with nervous clients. Calm, faintly disappointed, like he was explaining something obvious to someone who'd failed to understand. That's not my business account. I turned the statement around and pointed to the name, Holloway Commercial Holdings. It's an operating account for your business. It's more complicated than that. Of course it was. Anything involving his money was complicated. Anything involving mine was family. He lowered his voice. I moved the tuition money into an education reserve so I could manage the deadlines. Then show me the reserve. I don't have access from my phone. You have your laptop upstairs. His jaw tightened. Evie, I am not being interrogated in my own kitchen. It's my kitchen too. That landed harder than I meant it to. His eyes flicked toward the cabinets, the hardwood floor, the breakfast nook I'd renovated 6 years before I even met him. This house belonged to me long before Grant did. He stood. You're making a serious mistake. No, I said. I'm finally reading the statements. He left without breakfast. At 10:17 that morning, Madison called. I was reconciling payroll for a dental practice when her name popped up. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered. My card isn't working. No hello. No question about my mother. Just the card. I know. I removed you as an authorized user. Why? I felt the familiar pinch run down my right leg. Because your father made it very clear I'm not your parent. That has nothing to do with my card. It has everything to do with my card. She lowered her voice, probably standing near other people. I'm at Cedar Grove Outlet. I already bought lunch, and now I can't pay for the clothes. Then don't buy them. You can't just do this without warning. I warned you last night. You were being dramatic. Now I'm being clear. She hung up. By noon, she'd posted something online about older women who use money to control younger women. She didn't name me. She didn't need to. Grant's sister, Denise, called 20 minutes later. I just saw Madison's post. What is going on? I stopped paying some of her expenses. Denise made a shocked sound. Evie, you can't pretend to be family and then abandon a child because she hurt your feelings. She's 21. She has a father and a mother. You know Marlene can't afford tuition. Then Grant will have to. The silence on the line told me Denise knew something I didn't. Grant's had a rough year, she said carefully. So have I. That's different. You've always been good with money. I nearly laughed. That, apparently, was the entire family's financial philosophy. Evie's good with money, so Evie can absorb whatever everyone else has done with theirs. After we hung up, I sat staring at the screen. I'd expected anger from Grant and Madison. I hadn't expected an immediate chorus of relatives telling me I was cruel. For 10 minutes, I actually considered restoring the tuition transfer. Then Daniel called. Grandma told me what happened. She shouldn't have involved you. She didn't. Aunt Carol did. That sounds right. He hesitated. Are you okay? I'm fine. You don't sound fine. I rubbed my forehead. I may have overreacted. No, you didn't. You weren't there for the conversation this morning. I was there last night. His certainty irritated me. Try not to sound so pleased. I'm not pleased. You warned me about Grant from the beginning. I'm sure this is very satisfying. Daniel went quiet. That's not fair, Mom. I knew it the moment I said it, but pride kept me from apologizing. He ended the call a minute later. By 3 o'clock, I had managed to hurt the one person actually trying to help me. The number. The next morning, I met Tina Wallace at my bank near Keystone Parkway. Tina had helped me open my business account 11 years earlier. Reading glasses on a silver chain, the kind of person who remembers every client's kids by name. She couldn't tell me anything about Grant's private accounts, but she helped me review everything that belonged to me. Line by line, 22 months. The total made my stomach drop. $84,000. Some of it had gone where Grant said, Northgate University, the Jeep lender, Madison's phone company. But several transfers went to his brokerage business, a commercial loan servicer, and an account marked only with the initials MB. I thought about the furnace repairman who'd warned the heat exchanger might not survive another winter. Grant said we should wait. Madison's education comes first. I thought about the physical therapy sessions I canceled because the copay felt wasteful. Madison's education comes first. I thought about the new Lexus sitting in our garage. Tina closed the folder gently. You need an attorney. That afternoon, Grant discovered the premium cable package had been canceled. He marched into the kitchen holding the remote. Did you do this too? Yes, I was watching that. You can watch basic cable. This is childish. 2 days later, I stood behind him at Market District while he argued with a cashier over an 87-cent digital coupon that wouldn't load. The cashier looked exhausted. Let it go, I said. It's the principle. Outside, I looked at him over the grocery cart. You never checked prices when the money came from my account. That's not the same thing. No, I said. Apparently it was just easier. That evening, Madison showed up with a friend waiting in the driveway. I need the Jeep keys. I don't have them. You stopped the payments. The Jeep is titled to your father. She turned toward Grant, standing near the hallway, pretending to read an email. Dad. He cleared his throat. The vehicle may need to be returned. Temporarily. Madison stared at him. You said Evie had enough money to cover everything until graduation. The room went still. Grant's face hardened. Go wait in the car. No, You said she agreed. I looked at Madison. I agreed to help based on what I was told. You chose to pay, she shot back. Yes, and now I'm choosing to stop. She left angry, but not before she looked at her father in a way she never had before. That night, Grant sent 6 texts from the guest room. You are destroying this family. You are humiliating Madison. You have no idea what my business requires. I finally typed back. You stole from me, lied to your daughter, and used my dead husband's money to impress people. The signature. The next morning, my attorney, Nathan Kim, read the message and shook his head. Don't argue with him in writing again. He deserved worse. I'm sure he did. But every angry sentence you send can be printed without the 10 lies that came before it. Nathan helped me freeze my credit and pull my full financial history. That's when we found it. A request to add Grant as a joint owner on one of my investment accounts. The company had rejected it. The signature didn't match. Nathan set the rejected form beside a document I'd actually signed. Good news, no money moved. He pointed to a handwritten note at the bottom. Bad news. Whoever filled this out knew the exact value of the account. Only 2 people had ever seen that statement. Me and my husband. I drove home with the radio off. Normally I like something playing. Old country, local news, even commercials give my mind somewhere else to sit. That day I wanted silence. At 58, I'd spent my entire career helping small businesses avoid payroll mistakes. I catch missing decimal points. I notice duplicate invoices. I can usually tell when a number doesn't belong. Somehow, I'd missed the biggest fraud in my own life. That hurt more than the money. The days that followed settled into a miserable routine. Grant stayed in the guest room. He became strangely polite. Not warm, not apologetic, just polite. He'd ask if I wanted coffee. He'd fold the towels. 2 weeks earlier, I might have mistaken that for him wanting to fix things. Now it felt like negotiation. Every kindness came with invisible paperwork attached. Meanwhile, my body was falling apart. Hours of reviewing statements wrecked my lower back. My hands stiffened from sorting documents. Some nights I slept 3, maybe 4 hours. One Thursday evening, carrying laundry detergent down to the basement, my sciatica caught me mid-step. The bottle slipped. Blue detergent spread across the floor. I sat down on the bottom stair and cried. Not over the detergent, not even over the money. I cried because one question wouldn't stop circling. How could I have been this stupid? At 1:47 in the morning, I called my sister Carol. Evie, what's wrong? I tried to laugh, started crying instead. Tell me the truth. Did everyone see what Grant was? Except me? Carol was quiet for a moment. Then, gently, no. It feels like they did. Because he wasn't pretending all the time. He really was kind to you sometimes. That surprised me. People like Grant aren't monsters every minute of every day, she said. If they were, nobody would ever stay. I wiped my face. You aren't foolish because someone lied to you. She let the silence sit. Then, being lonely after losing Paul wasn't a character flaw. That sentence stayed with me for a long time. Whisper campaign. Grant started telling a different story. Not to me, to everyone else. A neighbor stopped me at the mailbox. How are you feeling? I'm fine. You've just seemed overwhelmed lately. What makes you say that? He shifted. Grant mentioned you've been under a lot of stress. That was all he said. But I heard the rest. An acquaintance casually asked if I was planning to slow down at work. A client emailed to make sure I wasn't retiring. Small comments, none alarming by themselves. Together, a pattern. Grant wasn't just defending himself, he was preparing people not to believe me. The idea made my stomach turn. I'd watched 2 close friends care for spouses with dementia. Memory loss terrifies people our age. Grant knew that. He wasn't accusing me outright. He was planting doubt. A few days later, something surprised me. Madison called. I'd like to talk. I think we've said enough. Please. Something in her voice was different. Less confidence, more uncertainty. We met Saturday morning at the Panera in Broad Ripple. No makeup, hair in a loose ponytail, an old Northgate sweatshirt instead of designer clothes. She looked exhausted. I already ordered your coffee, she said, standing awkwardly. Thank you. We sat in silence for almost a full minute. Then she sighed. I got a notice from school. If my account isn't current, I can't register next semester. What did your father say? I've called him 12 times. He says he's working on financing. She swallowed. But I saw pictures online. He was at some networking reception, not meeting lenders. Networking. The realization had finally reached her. I took a slow sip of coffee. I'm sorry. She looked up, surprised. You are? I don't want your education destroyed, but I still won't pay. She nodded slowly. I figured. Another silence. Then she reached into her backpack. I need to show you something. She laid several printed emails on the table. They're from Dad. My heart sped up as I read. One message discussed my consulting business. Another referenced my Carmel house. Then I found the sentence that turned my stomach. Once Evie signs the updated estate plan, we won't have to keep asking permission. What estate plan? Madison frowned. I thought you'd already agreed. I've never seen this. He told me you wanted everything to stay in the family. It is in the family. I pointed to the trust documents Nathan had copied for me. This house belongs to the Mercer Family Trust. This draft would give Grant broad control over my business. If I died first. Her face lost color. He told me, I thought Daniel was already taken care of. Grant told you that. And that I wouldn't need student loans because you wanted to help me. I looked out the window at the cars rolling through Broad Ripple, like nothing in the world had changed. Why are you showing me this? She hesitated. Because yesterday he asked me to sign something. What? A statement saying you always knew where the money went. The words landed between us. You didn't sign it. No. Why not? She looked embarrassed. Because he wouldn't answer my calls until he needed something from me. For the first time since I'd met Madison, I saw not an entitled young woman, but a daughter realizing she'd been useful before she'd ever been loved. I felt sorry for her. That didn't erase what she'd done. You charged things to my credit card. I know. You insulted me. You treated kindness like it was automatic. I did. I folded the emails carefully. I appreciate you bringing these. She looked hopeful. Does that mean you're not mad anymore? I'm still very angry. Her shoulders dropped. But I'm willing to believe you can become someone different. She nodded once. I'd like that. Before we left, I said one more thing. You'll still need to repay the personal charges you made. I figured. No arguments. A small smile appeared. I was going to argue. What changed? She looked down at her cup. I think I'm done believing everything Dad says. That wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't redemption. It was the first honest sentence she'd ever said to me. The voicemail. 2 days later, Nathan called. I spoke with Marlene Brooks, Grant's ex-wife. She kept everything. Emails, financial records, divorce filings. What did she say? Grant did almost exactly the same thing during their marriage. He paused. She also confirmed something else. Several transfers you believed were paying Madison's education were actually covering Grant's obligations from his divorce settlement. I closed my eyes. The money hadn't disappeared. It had been holding Grant's entire life together. Before I could respond, my office phone rang. Arthur Sloan, of Sloan Hardware Supply. Evie, we need to talk. Arthur never called directly. He usually emailed or left short voicemails ending with no rush. So when he said we need to talk, I knew this wasn't about payroll. Are you free this afternoon? I can be. I'd rather not discuss this over the phone. His voice was calm, but under it, not fear, disappointment. Arthur had owned that hardware store for more than 40 years. He'd buried his wife after a long fight with Alzheimer's, survived bypass surgery, and still walked his warehouse every Tuesday with a portable oxygen tank instead of the golf cart his employees begged him to use. He wasn't easily rattled. If Grant had upset Arthur, Grant had made a serious mistake. When I arrived at his office, 2 cups of coffee were already waiting. "I remembered," he said with a faint smile. "1 cream. You always do." He lowered himself into his chair, adjusting the oxygen tubing. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" I almost believed him. My stomach tightened. "What exactly did Grant tell you?" Arthur pressed play on his phone. Grant's voice filled the room. "Arthur, I don't want to alarm you, but Evie's been under a tremendous amount of stress. She's getting forgetful. Nothing dangerous yet, but I thought you deserved a heads up before payroll season gets busy. You may want to think about transitioning to someone else before things get complicated." The message ended. Arthur looked at me. "I've known you 15 years. I've watched you catch payroll errors that saved me thousands. You corrected my tax accountant twice. You once called me from a hospital waiting room because one employee's overtime looked wrong." I laughed weakly. "My mother was getting her knee replaced. And you still noticed." He leaned forward. "My Eleanor had dementia. I know what it looks like." He paused. "You don't have it." Those words broke something in me, not because I'd truly believed I was losing my memory, but because I suddenly understood how many people Grant had probably told the same story. Arthur slid a folder across the desk. "That's a copy of the voicemail. It's yours. You're my payroll manager." A sad smile. "And my friend." Facts. Only Nathan listened to the recording 3 times before setting down his glasses. "This is better than I expected. I thought you'd be furious." "I am, but I'm also practical." "What do you mean?" "The voicemail doesn't prove fraud. It doesn't prove forgery." He tapped my notebook. "But it establishes a pattern. Grant isn't just defending himself. He's trying to destroy your credibility and your business." He explained the rest carefully. The rejected investment authorization was still under review by the investment company's fraud department. I'd already filed a police report, so there'd be an official record. Whether investigators could ever prove who physically submitted the paperwork remained uncertain. Nathan wouldn't promise an arrest. That isn't how the real world works. Oddly, hearing that reassured me. He wasn't selling revenge. He was helping me rebuild. "The stronger case is civil," he said, listing it out on a legal pad. "Your separate funds moved into Grant's business under misleading explanations. He represented non-educational expenses as educational. He attempted to damage your professional reputation. We have documents, we have witnesses, we have banking records." He looked up. "That's enough to change your future." Not Grant's future. Mine. A week later, I filed for legal separation. Nathan also requested temporary financial restraints, a forensic accounting, preservation of electronic records, and exclusive control over my consulting business. Signing the paperwork felt strangely ordinary. No dramatic music, no shaking hands, just a blue pen on a conference table. 22 months of marriage reduced to a handful of signatures. When I finished, Nathan quietly slid a tissue box toward me. I hadn't realized I was crying. The reception grant changed almost overnight. The yelling stopped. Flowers appeared on the kitchen counter. He cooked chicken parmesan one night, warmed a towel in the dryer for my hands another. "You've been working too hard," he said gently. For a few dangerous days, I wanted to believe him. Loneliness does strange things after 50. It whispers. It reminds you how quiet a house gets after dinner, how much easier forgiving feels than starting over. One evening we laughed together watching an old episode of Frasier. For 30 minutes, everything felt almost normal. Then he reached into his briefcase. "I need your help with something." He set commercial refinancing paperwork on the table. "The collateral?" "My house." "Our house?" "No, Evie, my house. It'll only be temporary." "How temporary?" "Until this development closes." I looked at the projected loan amount. It would pay off business debt. It would also cover Madison's overdue tuition. "You planned this. The dinner, the apology, the flowers. You're being cynical. No, I said, closing the folder. You were being patient. I thought we were finally healing. You thought I was finally signing. Then he crossed a line I never expected. Paul would have helped. The room went completely silent. Paul, my first husband, the man I buried after 34 years of marriage. Grant had actually used his name. I doubt Paul would have let his family fall apart over money. I stood so fast the chair scraped across the hardwood. Do not, I said, use my husband's name to sell me your debt. I picked up the roses he'd brought that morning and dropped them straight into the trash. For 1 second, I saw genuine surprise on his face, not because I'd thrown away flowers, but because I'd stopped playing the role he'd written for me. That night, Daniel came over. He didn't lecture me. He just replaced the broken latch on my back gate. Afterward, we sat on the porch. I owe you an apology, I said. You don't. I do. He smiled. I wasn't happy to be right. I know. I was scared. Of what? That someone would hurt you. He looked at me for a long moment. I think they believe exactly what I believe. And what's that? You missed being loved. He squeezed my shoulder. That isn't the same thing as being stupid. Choosing a side. 3 days later, Nathan called. The Central Indiana Business Leadership Luncheon is next Friday. Grant still expects you to attend. He's telling the organizers you've had a stressful few weeks, but you're eager to support him publicly. I laughed, not a happy laugh. He wants me standing beside him. He wants your credibility standing beside him. Nathan paused. I have an idea. His advice surprised me. You're not going there to destroy him. You're going there to stop protecting him. There's a difference. A very important one. The following Tuesday, my doorbell rang. Madison stood there holding a small suitcase, eyes red from crying. My dad changed the locks. He said if I was choosing you, I could live with the consequences. I looked at the suitcase, then at her. No, I said quietly. You're finally living with his. When people imagine revenge, they picture shouting. A dramatic speech, someone getting slapped, someone getting arrested. Real life almost never works that way. Sometimes revenge is simply refusing to stand where someone expects you to stand. The luncheon. That Friday morning, I stood at my bedroom mirror fastening a pair of pearl earrings, a 25th anniversary gift from Paul. My fingers ached. Arthritis has a way of reminding you that even ordinary tasks take longer than they used to. Madison stood awkwardly in the hallway. You don't have to go. Yes, I do. I kind of wish you wouldn't. I smiled faintly. So do I. Daniel drove me downtown to the Meridian Grand. Nathan had insisted. No surprises. Don't arrive alone. Daniel turned off the engine. You nervous? I've been nervous for 3 weeks. He reached over, squeezed my hand. No matter what happens in there, I'm proud of you. I hadn't realized how badly I needed to hear that. The ballroom looked like every business luncheon I'd ever attended. Round tables, white cloths, coffee cups, tiny cheesecakes waiting for dessert. Roughly 200 people, bankers, business owners, accountants, people who'd trusted me with payroll records for years. Grant was already near the stage, shaking hands, the charming businessman everyone admired. He walked over, kissed my cheek for the photographers, and whispered, I knew you'd come. I said I would. I told everyone you've had a difficult few weeks. He adjusted his tie. Let's keep today positive. Then, without changing his pleasant expression, he leaned in. Smile. I looked directly at him. Why? So everyone knows you overreacted. For a moment, I almost walked away. Not out of fear, but exhaustion. Tired of explaining. Tired of paperwork. Tired of wondering whether people believed me. Then I remembered something my mother had said a few nights earlier while we replaced batteries in her TV remote. You don't have to prove you're brave every day. You just have to stop volunteering for the same humiliation. I walked toward the stage. The program moved through announcements, sponsors, scholarships, community awards. Finally, the master of ceremonies smiled toward me. Mrs. Holloway has kindly agreed to introduce this year's Business Leadership Award recipient. Applause. I walked to the podium and looked out across the room. Dozens of faces I recognized, people who'd trusted me with payroll taxes, retirement deductions, employee records for years. Marriage has an interesting way of blending reputations, I began. The room quieted. For nearly 2 years, many people assumed that because I stood beside my husband, I approved of every decision he made. I paused. I've realized that's no longer true. No one moved. My husband publicly informed me I had no parental role in raising his adult daughter. I accepted that boundary. I stopped voluntarily paying expenses that belonged to her parents. Confused glances around the room. Afterward, I learned that money I believed was supporting educational expenses had been directed elsewhere. Grant stood. Evie. I raised one hand. I'm almost finished. The room was so quiet I could hear silverware touching china near the back. I also discovered an unauthorized request involving one of my investment accounts. The matter has been reported and remains under review. I chose every word carefully. Nathan had been clear. Facts only. I've filed for legal separation and requested a forensic accounting. Grant reached the stage. That's enough. No. I looked around the ballroom. I came today because my presence has been used as proof that everything in our marriage and our finances is perfectly normal. It isn't. I'm no longer willing to lend my name to that story. I stepped back from the microphone. The applause never came. Neither did the outrage. Just silence. Grant grabbed the mic. I'm sorry, he said, with an embarrassed laugh. My wife has been under tremendous emotional stress. Many of you know her mother's been dealing with health issues. He sighed dramatically. We've been trying to handle this privately. Unfortunately, confusion sometimes looks like certainty. Several people looked uncertain. For one awful moment, I thought it had worked. The MC awkwardly suggested everyone continue with lunch while the program paused. Grant walked back over. I told you, you've embarrassed yourself. Then a chair scraped across the ballroom. Arthur speaks. Arthur Sloan stood slowly. Everyone in local business recognized him instantly. He didn't hurry, didn't raise his voice, didn't ask for the microphone. He just held up his phone. I received a voicemail Tuesday morning. Grant froze. My late wife spent 7 years with Alzheimer's disease. His voice stayed calm. I don't appreciate people borrowing that tragedy because they don't like being questioned. He pressed play. Grant's voice carried clearly across the nearest tables. Arthur, Evie's getting forgetful. You may want to think about transitioning your payroll before things become complicated. 20 seconds. It didn't need to be longer. The whispers spread through the ballroom faster than any speaker system could. Arthur slipped the phone back into his pocket. I've trusted that woman with my payroll for 15 years. He paused. I trust her today. Then he sat down. Grant tried to laugh. Arthur misunderstood. No. Every head turned. Madison had stood, trembling, holding the printed emails. I misunderstood. My father told me Evie had agreed to change her estate plan, that her business, her house, would eventually belong to our family. She looked at me. She never agreed. Grant stared at his own daughter. What are you doing? Telling the truth. I paid for everything you have. Her eyes filled. No. She did. The room fell silent again. No cheering. No applause. Real life doesn't sound like the movies. It sounds like people quietly realizing they've been lied to. The president of the business association walked onto the stage. In light of information brought forward today, the board will postpone this year's award, pending further review. That was all. No dramatic verdict, Just consequences. Beginning. Grant looked around the room. Several people avoided his eyes. A lender quietly left. A longtime client who usually greeted him with a handshake walked past without stopping. Someone else approached me instead. Evie, are our payroll records secure? Yes, they always have been. He nodded. I thought so. After the divorce took almost 11 months. A forensic accountant traced a large portion of my money into Grant's struggling development company. Some had covered legitimate household expenses. Much of it hadn't. The investigation into the investment paperwork dragged on for a while. Investigators couldn't ultimately prove who had physically prepared the rejected authorization, though it had originated from an email account tied to Grant's office. Faced with civil discovery, Grant eventually agreed to a settlement. I recovered part of my savings. Not all of it. Attorney fees consumed far more than I'd hoped. Justice is expensive. Grant's largest development collapsed within the year. He sold the Lexus. He moved into a modest apartment. Madison took a semester off from Northgate. She moved in with her mother, worked in the campus bookstore, took out student loans, and signed a repayment agreement for the charges she'd made on my credit card. Once a month, we meet for coffee. At first, we mostly talked about receipts and budgets. Months later, she said something I'd waited a long time to hear. I treated your kindness like proof you were weak. No, I said. It was proof I trusted the wrong person. I won't make that mistake again. Neither will I. Daniel helped me repaint the guest room. I finally replaced the furnace I'd kept postponing. My physical therapist joked that my back improved the moment I stopped carrying everyone else's problems. She wasn't entirely wrong. A few months later, I took my mother away for a quiet weekend. We walked slowly through the hotel lobby. She rubbed her knee. I rubbed my hands. Getting older hurts in places you didn't know existed, she said. I laughed. At least now I'm only paying for my own aches. She squeezed my arm. That's progress. It was. Looking back, the best part of this story was never watching Grant lose an award, a business deal, or even a marriage. The best part was realizing that kindness doesn't require endless sacrifice, and love doesn't require surrendering your judgment. If you've ever had someone mistake your generosity for an obligation, remember this. Setting a boundary may cost you a relationship, but it can save your self-respect. And sometimes, that's the beginning of a better life.